It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. I get up this morning, I'm on LinkedIn, and what do I see? I see a post out there by a reseller kind of complaining about the OEMs and the document imaging channel. Folks, if you're a reseller in the document imaging channel, it's a stressful time. I assure you, you're stressed out. You don't have any inventory. You're trying to fund leases that you've already sold, and you can't get them funded until you deliver the inventory. You don't have any toner. I mean, it's just a crisis. But you know what? It's not all the OEM's fault. Our industry's been in crisis for a half a decade. For at least 5 years, a big crisis. And you know what the real crisis is? The real crisis is over the last half a decade, we allowed our analysts to not analyze our industry, rather propagate what OEMs wanted us to hear. For the last 5 years, we've allowed our press to focus more on giving each other awards and making us all feel good than actually challenging any of the status quo. The crisis is that over the last 5 years, we never built an alternative business model to offset the decline in print, whether it was caused by COVID or whether it was caused by advances in technology. Print was on the decline, and it was going to go away from the big numbers that made us all rich, right? We all knew this. The crisis was we didn't prepare for it. We thought we had just a little more time. The crisis of running out of toner? Folks, that crisis could have been resolved 5 years ago. Where was your strategy to offset OEM toner with non-OEM toner? What was the strategy? Did you meet with my friends at Pollock and Pollock as an example 5 years ago and say, hey, you know, when the OEMs start to consolidate, or if one of these OEMs actually does go bankrupt, some of these OEMs are barely making any money. You know, I want to be in a position to be able to provide my customers alternative options for supplies and parts. I need some help. I got to have a strategy. Did you call up Clover Imaging 5 years ago and say, hey, I need to have a strategy because I see HP really getting to become a threat as they enter into the A3 space? Were you smart enough to visualize this threat that HP was going to cause? Or did you call up Sirkleski and his team and say, look, I better have a strategy that I can go into the market and supply HP equipment without HP? It wasn't about COVID. COVID was an accelerant. Got people all excited about some $100,000 analysis on COVID impacts to the print channel. I did a video on that already. I don't want to redo it. It was just stupid thinking. The problems that resellers are facing today are problems that they had 5 years ago. And the question is, what did you do about it? And are you ready to do something about it now? We still have no content. I don't see hardly any content from so-called consultants out in our space really helping our channel understand what's going on, come up with some solutions to help them. Why? Because the OEMs control the narrative. We've allowed the OEMs to control the narrative in our space for way too long. And if the one thing this crisis should do for all of the dealers in our entire industry is to take back control of the narrative and hold the OEMs accountable. Folks, I realize that OEMs are sponsors. I have a couple myself. But I also realize that if we can't have conversations with OEMs that are painful, how in the world are we ever going to change anything? If our analysts refuse to analyze anything, just basically copy and paste what OEMs want them to say, how are we going to change anything? And you know, I was at that BTA meeting, and I talked about this in a video earlier this week where I asked the OEMs a question, and Bob Goldberg had that look on his face like, oh my God, probably petrified of the question I might ask. And I started thinking to myself, if an analyst that was there or someone from the press that was there at that meeting would have raised their hand, would Bob have had a funny face at all? I gotta say probably not. Because I don't think he would have been threatened, or the OEMs would have been threatened by any question these people might have asked. Because over the last 5 years, I haven't seen anybody really challenge the OEMs like they need to be challenged. And why is that? Because our industry is more focused on giving each other awards to make us feel good than spanking us to make us better. And surely right now, I welcome the competition to help challenge the status quo. Surely if you're a consultant in this space, you could do a video and you could share some original content, an original thought of how you could really help the dealers and help these ancillary industry or companies around our industry that support our industry? How can we help all these people change the game? But we just can't do that because we have such great relationships with some staunch people that are in our space. We think thought leadership is being everybody's friend, when thought leadership, at the end of the day, challenges a lot of things. And relationships and friendships are challenged with true thought leadership. That's a fact, folks. You can't make everybody happy. We all know that. That's the first thing you learn when you become a new leader, right? Don't try to make everybody happy, because if you make everybody happy, at the end of the day, no one will be happy. Our industry's got to stop trying to make everybody happy. Our analysts have to hold the OEMs accountable. Ladies and gentlemen, I could have asked a lot more questions at that BTA meeting. But I was convinced if I did, I would have came across as the big old asshole. Probably would have never got invited back to another meeting. Hell, I might not get invited back just because of the video I'm doing today. But the bottom line is, we got to be able to talk to our OEMs. They're grown-up people. We're grown-up people. It's not daycare. Okay? It's a crisis. And we need to really try to solve this crisis. Because I think the OEMs, if they figure out how to work together a little bit, maybe, if they figure out how to change the language a little bit, maybe they could help the dealers with financial help in a different way. I would have loved to ask all those OEMs, are you willing to lower the price of all your supplies to offset the money that the dealers are losing because they can't sell any hardware? Are you willing to lower the price on all of your parts? And maybe some of the OEMs are doing that. But if they are, they didn't share that. I was kind of surprised that Jim from Rico didn't bring up Mindshift. When Bob asked all the OEMs, what else can you do with your resellers now that you don't having struggles with print and supplies? I mean, we know that's a problem, okay? We all know the stuff's on the boats. We don't need to talk about that too much, right? But what else can you do to help? And Laura from Konica talked about All Covered. Mike talked about the interactive panels and things. Rico talked about DocuWare. I got my own thoughts on depositories or DocuWare and how that's not going to change a dealer's world. Those are one-offs. But I didn't hear him mention Mindshift, the IT services company they bought. And if he did, I apologize. But I didn't hear him mention it. I didn't hear him talk in depth about it. I do remember Konica talking about All Covered. I would challenge a little bit of All Covered. I don't want to hear leaders talking about how they're kicking butt in a deliverable without really sharing the numbers and the details of that and how are you really making money. Make it public. That'd be awesome. I'd love to share that story. But ladies and gentlemen, we got to start challenging. Our industry needs to look past itself. We need to start exploring in that IT space. There's all kinds of magazines out there. There's all kinds of analysts out there that are looking at technology and how technology is impacting businesses. Not just focused on print, the smallest piece of technology in any business. Look, print's extremely important to the OEMs that you've been supporting for the last 50 years, right? But it's not important to your end user. It's just a component. And you better start thinking about how you're going to help your own business as these OEMs have more and more pressure put upon them. And you better be prepared for it. The good thing about COVID, it did accelerate all this and bring it all to a head real quick. So hopefully, because it's all to a head real quick, the industry's leaders will actually start forming real solutions to help them change the game in the deliverable, change the game in how they finance. Maybe newcomers need to come into our space. I was at that BTA meeting and I met a leasing guy, Jim Williams from Veriton. We all know that Rob Parker went to work for a leasing company called Amur. Those are two new names in the space. I talked a little bit with Nick C. from Leaf. Is Leaf ready to really shake it up and challenge the status quo of financing in our industry? Is Veriton, is Amur? Can the legacy players be challenged? Can we even talk about challenging the legacy players? A lot of times we can't, because we believe that relationships based on a 1999 deliverable will carry us through a 2025 deliverable. I've been telling everybody in our industry this for a long, long time. During a crisis, during an industry's collapse, and we're collapsing, folks, Not that print's going away, but that old business model is collapsing rapidly. Relationships will be stressed. Relationships will be stressed, and how you stress them, the level you want to have of stress is up to you. We don't have to hate people. We don't have to despise people. We can't be afraid to challenge because we're afraid someone's not going to like us. Thankfully, I don't worry about that. But folks, we've really got to step up our game, and our game is really in the analysts, and our game is really in the consultants. If you're from an OEM and you have insight on an OEM, then share that insight to help our dealers be better at fighting for relevance with that OEM. Wouldn't that be great? Folks, like I said, we're in a crisis, but it started 5 years ago. And we need to prepare now like never before as we manage our way through this. That's the problem. We have to manage our way through the current crisis. At the same time, prepare to deliver in 2025 in a whole different way than we are today. Well, I didn't mean to go on another rant. I do love what I do. And everybody that knows me knows this. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and I'll see you all tomorrow.